Hello and welcome to the video. This is a quick little video talking about why sometimes you can watch reviews of a product on places like YouTube, or it could be on the forums, could be anywhere actually, and have a difference of opinion. Occasionally I'll get messages from people saying, well, hang on a minute, such and such a reviewer said something different. And it may be that I've reviewed a product and said it was yeah, and somebody else has said it was amazing. It might be some product that I said is amazing and another reviewer's gone, it's a bit yeah. And this is exactly what you'd expect. And I'm not sure why people think that all reviewers would have exactly the same opinion, because we're not all the same person, and reviews are subjective, particularly when you're talking about one individual on a YouTube channel flying and playing with stuff and reporting on their own personal experiences. Sometimes I have a really smooth, fun, exciting experience. Things like this HGLRC Recon 5 is probably one of my favorite quads at the moment. However, not everyone might like it that way. Other things like the Radio Master TS16S, which is a radio that I really like. It is bulky, it is heavy, it is populated with lots of switches, which just means that people with smaller hands or that prefer smaller, more portable radios with less weight probably aren't that impressed. Other things like the Diatone Ripper R690. This is one plane that I'm currently playing with at the moment, and I am finding my way around with it. And while it is a good model, I'm lucky enough to fly an awful lot of wings in my hobby here. There are a number of things that I think could have been done better. So this is why you will find differences of opinion. In fact, when I find products that have a uniformly good set of reviews, I'm always a little bit suspicious, and I'll cover a little bit more about why that is in a moment. One of the big reasons for the differences of opinion is how experienced you are with a particular topic. It might be that you get a radio in for a review, and if it's only your second ever radio you've ever had in, it might seem fantastic compared to the one you've already got. However, when you've been reviewing for quite a while and you've probably looked at 60 or 70 different radios, you have a much better background of experience of things that work well on radios and things that don't. Similarly, you'll have developed your own particular biases. There are things that you will like on a radio, and there are things that you're not bothered about. So things like having a JR bay at the back for me is really important for stuff like Crossfire, because I find Crossfire. If you don't use lots of module bays at the back, then you know what? That's not going to be on your list. And that kind of leads nicely into my next point, which is how well the product fits with your own personal experience and your bias. Now, if you are somebody that wants a small portable wing that you can fit DJI stuff into, then this is a nice option. Are there better options for analog FPV? Possibly. Are there better options for longer flight times? Definitely. Are there better options for portability? Yeah, absolutely, because the wings don't remove on this. And that again comes down to how the individual reviewer views a product through their own particular preferences and bias. Now, there are a number of things, for example, that I would want to change in this. I would want the body to be slightly wider. Then you could mount the battery laterally, i.e. across the body, like you can in some other models. That's one of the things that I did with the Sonic model with the AR Wing Pro. The bay is wide enough to actually take one of the long, thin 18650 batteries. But somebody else who's not bothered about that, who's quite happy with the flight time out of the battery that they can fit in this, because you can easily get 2200, even a 3000 milliamp hour pack, if you don't have the big chunky DJI stuff at the front, you know what? Then it's probably going to be perfect. Again, if you're not bothered about having the wings being removable for transport or whatever, then that's not going to be an issue for you either. Next big thing to think about when you're watching a review is how is the person making the review compensated, i.e. how or are they getting any money from reviewing the product? Now, the most obvious one is things like sponsorship, where, you know, somebody like Radio Master may pay you for a video. Now, you do have to tell your audience that that is the case when you're being paid to do a review. Otherwise, it's a little bit naughty. It's not very moral to kind of be paid to do a review, then come on a video and go, hey, it's brilliant, because actually it might not be brilliant. You might be saying that because you're getting paid. Second thing to think about is, has that reviewer got their own particular brand of a competitive product with their name on it? Lots of the larger channels, this is not myself, I specifically haven't done this. Lots of people have gone out and put their own names on motors, frames, FPV kit, ESCs, flight controllers. And while that is a way for them to generate income if they're trying to replace a day job by being a YouTuber, then, sorry, I have to say it that way because that's how everyone I know says it, slightly derogatory way. But that is, one of the decisions they've made. And part of that is making sure that they have lots of income streams. So every time somebody buys one of their motors or one of their frames or one of their particular branded radios or whatever it is, they get a little bit of money. Now, does that mean that a product that is in competition with those products that they get money from is going to get a fair shake? I personally would call that into question. If I was getting paid if you bought one of these, and I'm not, by the way, but if you were, and I got an almost identical radio in that performed just as well, I'm going to tell you that this is still my favourite, for no other reason than if you buy one, I can afford to eat this week. Things like affiliate links are very widely used. Lots of the larger channels used to use things like Banggood a lot, Amazon links. A lot of the Bitly links down below videos tend to be affiliate links. So if you do buy the product, then they get some money out of it as well. Now that does also mean that there is a temptation to pull your punches a little bit. Now the good news is that there are channels, and I put myself in this, that actually don't care if you want to buy it or not. It's entirely up to you. I would rather tell you the truth and not have as large a following. And also, I find it difficult to get excited by channels where everything they review is amazing, because even myself, who's very careful with what they get into review, everything can't be amazing because, as we've already covered, it might not meet how I fly, it might not be exactly as I expected, and we'll come on to expectations in a minute. Aesthetics and function are really important as well. What does the product actually look like? Now for some people, they don't really care about that, and for electronics that are in a way, the rat's nest that we have in our models these days, it kind of doesn't matter. But for something like a wing or a quadcopter, that may or may not be of interest to you, as well as how it flies. If you have something that looks beautiful and performs really well against something that doesn't look as nice and performs equally well, some people might not be bothered about the aesthetics. The fact that it's $10 cheaper or £10 cheaper might swing it. Some other reviewers might say, well, actually, you know what, I'd rather have the pretty one. I actually think this wing is actually quite pretty, to be honest. I think the design is quite nice. Could do with a little bit more cooling. But again, go back to my second point about experience of the topic. Let's talk about expectation. So some things are overhyped, in my humble opinion. So there are some things that you hear about that you see on loads of YouTube videos, you see on loads of advertisements with Google Analytics following you around the web and constantly showing you buy one of these, they're brilliant. And when you get it in, it's been hyped so much, it doesn't quite meet those expectations. And that, unfortunately, does mean that subjectively it feels like a disappointment. Marketing departments are very clever in these main manufacturers, and they work very hard to try and set your expectations so that you have a great experience. Things like unboxing this wing, for example, the way it comes packaged up makes it feel like a quality product. Now, it costs them a little bit more money to ship it that way, but in terms of the expectation and the experience of unboxing, that gets a big thumbs up. Now, that might not mean much to you overall, because you know what, the boxing takes all of 5 minutes. Once you've got everything out of the box, it goes in the recycling bin. But it does help get that feeling of this is quality. Similarly, you might have it the other way around. You might have something that you've never heard of before. This is actually an example of that, which is why I've got it in my hand. My friend Adam got one of these, and he was flying it around, and it was flying like Billy-O. I mean, you can see mine has already I've had to replace and remake a new tip. I ripped one of my ailerons off. I don't know if you can actually see through that, but it's been held in place with Blenderm hinges. He got his, and it flew amazingly well. So well that I got one in to have a crack at. Now, this isn't something that people have been going or offering me for a review. This is something that I went out and actually went and looked for. Now, because of those low expectations, because I hadn't seen lots of videos with it in, it has impressed me. But if it had come in and another 5 or 6 channels, and all the marketing money had been spent telling me it was the best thing since sliced bread. It's not. I don't think it is. But in terms of a basic wing with good FPV and some nice features on it, it's actually really nice. And that leads me on to the last reason why a review might be different, and that is the relationship with the vendor. Now, I personally like to review products that I have an open line of communication with the vendor on, and that is because I like to talk to them before I make my review. Now, the reason for that is that I have seen reviewers, some of the large channels, review a product and misrepresent the product or talk about a problem with it because they have made it wrong or set it up wrong. And that then potentially has a knock-on effect with people watching the video and taking away from the video that that product isn't very good, when actually it's that particular reviewer that's made a mistake. And it's easy to do. If you're trying to make a review and you've only had the product for a week or 2 weeks, you might assume something, and I don't like to assume. So I like to, if I'm not quite understanding why something is that way, wherever I can, I like to go back to the manufacturer and say, hang on a minute, this doesn't seem to make sense. And then I explain why they took that particular decision, why the product is designed that way, and then you can go, oh, okay, that makes an awful lot of sense. But also I like working with manufacturers and vendors who are willing also to take feedback and listen to what we as pilots want. Because ultimately you end up with a better product. So it's not their idea of what they want to sell you. Talking about people like DJI, GoPro, people like that. It actually ends up with being products that we as pilots actually looking for and want to buy. However, going back to what I said at the top, it's all based on personal experience and bias. Things like the AR Wing Pro had a list of 7 things that I would want out of a wing that Sonic Model very generously took into their consideration and worked with me on to develop the product. That list of 7 things might not be the same for somebody else. But the fact that they were talking to me is a good sign. And that's why I'm always a little bit careful about just getting product in from a vendor that I've never heard of before, because I might review it and not get, because of my experience and bias, how that product is working and not be complimentary in the video for it. And I don't think that's particularly fair on you, the audience, to misrepresent a product and have you walk away confused about why that's the case. But hopefully that little kind of 14-minute ramble gives you an idea of why reviews are different. They should be different. We are all different. Radio control is a fantastically broad church. Whether or not you're flying one of these things, or you're flying one of these things, or you're into cars, boats, trains, planes, radio control combat, line of sight, FPV, the list is huge. If we all were interested and excited about the same stuff, this hobby wouldn't be anywhere near as fun and interesting as it is. So do keep that in mind next time you're watching a review. And if you find that reviews are differing, that is to be expected. I would try and go along with the reviews that from somebody that you trust and somebody whose opinions matches the way that you are in the hobby, because they're the ones that are probably going to be closer to how you would feel if you got that product in to try and fly. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organized into easy to follow playlists that, if you're trying to learn a topic, will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.